Welcome back to an episode here on the Heart and Hustle podcast with our next guest, Meredith. How you doing today?
I'm good. I'm excited to be here, Efrain, and thank you for the invitation.
Same. Listen, I start off with our names, Meredith. Did I say it correctly?
You did pretty good. It's
I,
Meredith is fine.
Meredith.
Yeah,
Oh my God. You
I've
know,
been
I,
called so many different other things, but no, Meredith. Yeah.
I say that because even with my name, it's one of those names that we just probably would have butchered all my years, right? And same for you.
Yeah.
I'm pretty sure people butcher it all the time, and you're just like, whatever. Sometimes do you actually are you at the point where you correct them or you just ride with it?
Mm. You know, um, I think people have a lot of safety once you build bonds and relationships. So
Mhm.
everybody should be given some level of grace, I think, at the first time. I like to have this kind of core belief that everybody has good intentions at the heart.
Yeah.
It's when that kind of error and that oversight continues to happen over and over again that I become a little bit more curious. And I might say, let's have a gentle conversation, a very strength based conversation, because names are important. That's your
Yeah.
identity. There's a story there. Somebody did that by intentionality. And I think we should honor that as people. So, yeah, but I'm always high grace. I
Okay.
will correct you lovingly once we've had a chance to build a connection through relationship.
Good. You ain't correct me, Seth. But we're still trying to figure this out. I get it.
Yeah, yeah. But I know your heart is pure and you are good. Like we've established some connection prior to this, so we're not going in cold. But
I
no,
got you.
everybody
Meredith
needs
is what it is.
grace.
Meredith.
Yeah, yeah.
My fault. So I really want to get to the story. I think when we talk about leaders in the space of doing passionate work, purposeful
Mhm.
work, it's not
Yeah.
about paychecks. I say this all the time. There's always a story, and I love to always ask the why. And people don't get to see the why when I get them on a podcast, but I asked the why. And your why was you went from a foster kid being kicked out of school to then you decided to lead a disaster response for FEMA. And now you're building systems, right, that see our kids beyond their trauma. And
Right.
it was a trauma. It
Yeah.
was life. It was life experiences that we've had to encounter and overcome that really put you into the seat. Like when we kind of go back, like did you ever imagine yourself in the seat that you're in today?
No, I never had a life goal, and I never would have dreamt that I could become a CEO and a president of an organization. And
Mm,
just frankly, I thought it was outside of my wheelhouse and my capability. And I say that because, as you mentioned, I was a byproduct of adoption and a foster care alum. So everything about what data and research says is possible in terms of success, the outcomes are not good and they're not promising. So what's interesting, though, I tell people is despite my trauma, I think it's been God's amazing grace and just the
mhm,
transformative power, the healing power of community. That even though I was very broken and I was a wild child, I was so fortunate to be intersected with people. So, gatekeepers, mentors, coaches who saw something in me that I like to say was a spark. They became curious about me. I think they told themselves that what I'm seeing now, the broken, the misbehavior, it is not going to be the totality of her life. And so, in that, they leveraged their power, their privilege, their positionality, and they gave me a chance. So, as I was trying to heal, whether that was going through school or whether that was applying for jobs, I had individuals who opened doors for me that I would have never been able to open for myself.
mhm.
And so those were people who said, I see something different and unique in you. And I was always hungry and gritty, and I was smart and I could learn fast. So as I healed, these people helped lift me, I think, to life and leadership. They took a gamble, they took a chance. They allowed me to heal. They created safety for me to heal, but they also gave me a platform to really go after some aggressive positions. And I just kind of, like a hungry person trying to survive and thrive, I climbed a ladder, but it wasn't without the help and the lift of those people, those champions of my village.
And today you're now what? What is your title? What's your organization
Yeah.
that you're with?
So I'm the president and CEO, the proud president and CEO of Cornerstones of Care. We're a 156-year-old behavioral health nonprofit organization. We're based out of Kansas City, Missouri. We serve about 16,000 children and families each year across Missouri and Kansas and beyond. And so the thread of our work is that we serve children and families who have had some type of intersection with trauma. We want to prevent it, we want to help heal them from trauma, but give them tools, supports, therapeutic treatments, and services so that they can get on a pathway towards vibrant life, resilience, and recovery. We also do foster care and adoption. And so a lot of the children and families we work with have had some intersection with the child and family welfare system. But
Mhm.
our true north is keeping children and families safe, healthy, and whole together. My desire, my goal, my courageous must do is I don't want to see any child and family come into any system of any type unnecessarily. So if we can help them stabilize and heal what's broken, what's starting to break before a family has to become dismantled, that is what we want to be known for. And that's what we do at Cornerstones of Care.
I love that. And when we spoke the first time, you said you don't need perfect beginnings to lead. You need someone to believe beyond what's broken, and kind of
Correct.
what the space that you're in today,
Yeah, yeah.
right?
Just a
Um,
little seed, if someone has the hope and say, I know there's potential beyond what I see today, that could totally transform a
yeah.
child's life, an adult's life. I think people think traumatized child results in traumatized adult that will never become changed, never become restored. I don't buy that. There's no child or family or life story that's so far gone that it cannot be rebuilt, repurposed, and restored.
Which is why it's so important to be mindful of the words you say, right?
Yes.
Because sometimes you could be in a broken moment and someone takes what you said
Mhm.
and run with it. And I've
Mm,
actually experienced that. I ain't gonna lie to you, where a friend, I guess I must in my 20s, I must have not had the same belief in God that I have today.
yeah.
And she, as we get older, she said, I remember when you said that you didn't believe in God. And I'm like, I said that? Like, there's no way I said that, right? But
Yeah.
that's going back to sometimes we're in broken moments and we say things that are not us, are not true.
Yes. Yeah.
So I've actually had to be mindful even when I tell someone their small business, no, your business. Let me
That's right.
change the
That's right.
words, right? It is the words that truly change us. I remember I was early, maybe 19, 20 years old when I heard the words from the chief development officer at Subway. I was there, and the
Mm,
guy didn't know me, but he met me for a couple hours, got to know my story, and he says, "Man, you're a rock star." And his
mm,
words to me was, "If my son grows up to be anything like you, I'll be a happy father." So for
oh,
someone that didn't have a father, right?
yeah.
We'll get into the stories here in just a bit, your story, but someone that didn't have a father, you're like, "Oh my God, I'm somebody?" Like, and
Yeah.
I lived that. I wanted to become that rock star, and it gave me something to really keep pushing towards. And someone believed in me, right?
Yeah.
Another male figure at that, because I didn't have that. Sometimes we need those little things. Um,
Absolutely.
in your case, though, I want to kind of go back to the beginning of it all, because
Yeah.
another thing that we share is that we're both adopted by our aunts. What do you
Yeah.
remember most about the moment your aunt stepped in?
So it's so interesting, and I don't know if this is just true to culture. My family origin is really from the southern and kind of impoverished parts of Louisiana and Arkansas. So my birth mother was actually born in Winsboro, Louisiana, a very impoverished kind of town, and she was one of 8 siblings. And what's interesting is there was a practice I think that was common, particularly in the South with Black culture, is that if parents weren't quite equipped and ready to be parents at the time, my dear, granny, grandmother might raise the baby. And so that was a common practice. And so I grew up believing that my mother was always my mother. It wasn't, and probably until I was about 7 or 8, where there was just some exchange of story where I came to find out that I was adopted. My birth mother had reached out and called my adopted mother, who was her and is her biological sister. And she, in a moment of just needing support, knew that she could rely on family. Didn't want to go through the system if she didn't have to, and just made a call. And what I love about the courage and the heroism that is my adopted mother. So she started out as my aunt, and today she is my mother. She was on her way up from Louisiana to Kansas City. She was a recruit in the late 60s. She had put herself through college, straight A student, went to Southern, had become a statistical engineer. And so she was getting ready to work for an aerospace plant in Kansas City in the late 60s. Like, it is the whole Hidden Figures story in
Yeah,
reality.
yeah, for
But
sure.
she had a life and a goal and a trajectory that was climbing. And then all of a sudden, she got the phone call from her sister. And instead of saying no, instead of saying, let me think about it, she said, I will do it. And she said, the condition is I'm going to adopt this child as mine. I sometimes think about the fear, the courage, just the emotion that happened between those two women in that conversation. And it gives me goosebumps because talk about the epitome of selflessness and
Mm,
sacrifice. Talk about the epitome of courage to say, I will take this child as my own, and she will know no different. So I think the beautiful part, to answer your question, is while it took me a while to really understand my adoption story,
Mm,
I do believe my biological mother, there was some perhaps thought of shame that it was a bad thing that she gave her child away. If you think about how people and families tell adoption stories today,
mhm,
they make books and it's an anniversary and it's a whole celebrated thing. And
right.
I didn't have that. And so I think the takeaway just from that memory of how it probably took several years, if not decades, to take piece by piece and understand the story was adoption is such a beautiful thing. And
Mhm,
if it's necessary to create a safe, healthy, restorative environment in which a child can be raised, let's do it. Like it's not the dirty, ugly word. So, not much memory of the moment it happened, but I have come to appreciate the gravity and the
mm.
significance of that gift more than I can even convey. Yeah.
Hey, real quick, if you enjoying the podcast, we first want to say thank you. And we also just want to give you a little insight of what we're up to at Francis. Some don't even realize that we're working with organizations to help them use AI to create that real human communication experiences, where that's actually supporting your families, those patients, or the entire community. We're actually creating tech that connects. Check it out, francis.ai. And everybody's story is so very different when it comes to
Yeah.
adoption. You know,
Yes.
my mom that adopted me, which was my aunt, but that's
Mhm.
obviously like you, I call her mom, right?
Yeah.
She didn't find out that her mom, so she grew up till she was I think 15, 16,
Mhm.
believing her mom that was raising her was her mom, but it was really her aunt, and that her aunt was her mom the whole time.
Mm.
So she just
Wow.
had life backwards the whole time. Didn't
Yeah.
find out till she was 16 years old.
Mm.
Now that grew the resentment, right?
Yes. Yeah.
And I don't know that her mom passed, her biological mom, which is my grandma, passed away, and I don't know they ever were able to rekindle that relationship, and I don't know what the situation was. But it is when a woman steps in, that is your mom.
Yeah.
You know, that is mom. Like you just at this point are blessed with two moms. But
Yes. Yeah.
that is like respect. And even when you talking about going through it, I just think about it as well. I don't know that I was as grateful as I am today in the
Yeah.
moment that I was in as I was growing up
I
thinking,
wasn't
why
either.
me?
Yeah, I
Right?
wasn't either.
And I can imagine for you finding it at 6, like there's a lot of resentment. For me, is I don't really know when I found out. I feel like I knew almost my whole life, but
Mhm.
I remember at 2 years. I don't remember, but at 2 years old is when I was, taken from my biological mom and given to my aunt.
Mhm.
And so from 2 years old, that was just mom. I remember
Yeah.
at 7 years old actually physically going into the courtroom and getting
Mhm.
signed away. I remember the rights being signed away at 7 years old. That's all I remember. But before that, I was already with my aunt that I called mom.
Yeah.
And it took me a long time. And then as I heard her story, and I can imagine that's why you feel some ways you feel now, is that when you start to hear the stories and the sacrifices they made in their own lives.
Yes.
My
Yeah.
mom already had four of her own kids and decided to raise three. This was a young mom at 20 years old. I think actually her first was at 18. So by 28, she's already had four kids. That's
Yeah.
when she took us in. And then you decided to take three other. That sounds crazy to me.
Yeah.
You know? So
Yeah.
when I hear this story, I'm like, you have to give grace,
You
you know,
do. You do.
um, even to your biological mother to say, to let go the pride and say, you know what, I can't do this,
Yeah.
but I know someone that can,
Yeah.
and put you in those hands. So man, what a story! I love it. We're
Yeah.
adopted. We're brothers and sisters by adoption. How about that?
Yeah, I love that. And there's a point that I think you hit on that is so important. And if we're talking about great leaders are radically transparent and they are authentic. And you look at me
Mhm.
today, and I tell that story from a vantage point of a lot of grace. And
Yeah.
what you see and hear is a healed heart. But the moment, there's something about research. And if you're not familiar, for your listeners, look up adverse childhood experiences or the ACE score. There's a lot of research that says when children encounter trauma at an early age, it's complex, it's visceral, and it rewires the brain. It leaves a mark. And I remember going to my mom's safety or safe deposit box just last year. So at 43 years old, and finding this tattered old piece of paper that has the 16th Circuit Court of Jackson County on it, and just kind of like, what is this? And I see my name. And
Mm.
her response was, "Don't you remember we put on that beautiful little yellow dress and we went down to the courthouse and you became mine?" Like that was a new layer of the story that I had never heard in 43 years. And
Yeah.
so as I kind of piece back where I was, what happened when I think I knew. Like you, I say 6, it could have been 6, it could have been 12. There was trauma that was embedded from that moment. And I think it materialized as bad behavior. So it
Yeah.
was misconduct in the school. It was, trying to diagnose me with ADHD. It was all the things. And it became really hard for my adoptive mother, my aunt, to really provide me loving, stable parenting because I was broken. And that broken just continued
Mhm.
to unravel and get worse. So I want to hold space for that to say, we can talk about the beautiful part of the sacrifice, but it takes a healed heart and a lot of
Yeah.
therapeutic treatment to get to that point. That's just real.
No, 100%.
Yeah.
I remember I started a nonprofit in my whole life growing up because of my life, the way that I was brought. I knew that I wanted to give back because I
Yeah.
felt
Of
like I was given a second chance in life. I don't know if you felt like this, but I feel like I was given a second chance in life. I wanted to
course.
go and do a nonprofit.
Absolutely.
I didn't know I wanted to do a nonprofit. I didn't know what that was. I just
Yeah.
knew I wanted to give back.
It's in our blood.
Actually,
Yeah.
let's stop lying here. I just knew I wanted to give back. And then, I was 27 years old. I did the show Undercover Boss, and they gave me 5,000 to give to an organization after they found out my
Mm.
story.
Yeah.
But I originally was adopted in Boston, moved to Florida, knew nothing about organizations, nonprofits, knew nothing about
Mhm.
that. So these $5,000 was just going to sit there. So someone
Mm.
said to me, "Hey man, you always said you wanted to give back. Instead of giving back just once in your life, you can give back for a lifetime. Start your own organization."
That's good.
So you can't tell somebody that just has this energy and just go get a mentality. That's like, all right, cool. I'm gonna figure it out.
Let's go.
So
Yeah.
I figured it out, and then I got the 5,000 donated to the organization. But
Mm.
even in this process, one of the I still hasn't talked about sexual abuse to no one. I really wasn't talking about adoption. Like all these things were like swept under the rug,
Yeah.
right? Barely past high school. Now I'm on my own, 18 years old, and but it was when I met my now wife where she knew I was broken. She was going through these things, right? She's uncovering these things that even I sometimes didn't even know about myself.
Yeah.
But one of the strong things she said to me is, "How do you expect to go help somebody else if you haven't helped yourself?"
That's good. She's a
And I was
genius.
like, "What do you mean?" Like, like shout out to the woman out there that really be out here pouring into their men.
Yeah. It was
But
mic drop. It's like, what? Say that again. Come on, come on.
when she said that, that changed the game and
Yeah.
realizing that I did have to fix me before I can go and try to help anybody.
Yeah.
And through that, and just growing and uncovering that, yes, there was a lot of bad times. To be quite frank, I don't know that I remember my childhood as well as others. Every time she tells me something, I'm like, I wish I can go back that
Yeah.
far.
Yeah.
But there was so much hurt that maybe that's why, I
To
don't.
agree.
Um, so yes, I'm more grateful now. And actually, that's the word that when people say everything that you experience in your life, if you could put it in one word, what's your one word? I say grateful.
I like that word.
Because one thing I heard recently, there is no testimony without a test.
That's
And
right.
through that test that God has given us, we get to share testimonies to go inspire and
Absolutely.
empower and
Yeah.
educate and all these different things. And do it authentically us and
Yes.
sharing our stories, but also like I love that about us. Like
Yeah.
it's so
Yeah.
cool when you tell me you adopt, I'm like, so and you the president? This is so cool.
Shout it
Uh,
from the mountaintop. And what used to feel like a scarlet letter or a scar
yeah.
is really the exact nugget that God allowed us to have to facilitate and foster inspiration and
Mhm.
transformation and impact in the lives of so many. So we don't realize it when we're going through the fire and we're in the broken cave and the broken nest then. But man, if you just persist through it, you find that anchor. For me, it is that faith and relationship with Jesus. But for some, it's something different. But you find that anchor that gets you through. And when you're on the other side, you're like, okay, I got to tell somebody. And you just can't help it.
Mhm.
And people
Yeah.
will see it in you coming before you even open your mouth. They're like, something's different about you. And I was like, yeah, that's my Jesus glow. That's my healing glow.
I actually just talked to a friend yesterday, and both just around 2 days actually. So 2 days ago, I spoke to her, and we were in the middle of parking lot just doing some work. And she has an event coming up, and I was just telling her like, don't figure out why you do it,
That's right.
the whole God, like all these different things. And sometimes I can come across to myself like I talk too much, right? In my mind,
Mm.
it's just my brain talking. And I remember driving home talking to my wife, and I had an hour and a half conversation in the parking lot with this, this woman. And I told my wife, I was like, man, sometimes I just think I just want to shut up. Like, man,
Mm.
you talk a lot, right? That's what I'm saying. So the next day I'll talk to this friend because we're doing this project together. And I say, hey man, yesterday I know I was talking a lot. And she says, Efrain, don't you ever think that you talk a lot, because everything I was asking God for, you were literally confirming.
That's
And
good.
she says, I sat there and I digested everything you said. And I literally was just talking to somebody for an hour, and all I can say is how Efrain.
Mm,
And it is just us telling stories.
yes.
It is just us going through life experiences ourselves, and it doesn't have to be just the trauma that from young kids, but even trying to get into the spaces that we're in today, we got stories
Yes.
on
Yes.
how we failed, on how we were people didn't see our value, so we either
Yes.
pivoted or we had to do something to for someone to see that. Sometimes trying to fit in somebody else's box when in reality we had our own
That's right.
box to fit into.
That's
We had
right.
to know our worth and see the value within ourselves.
That's so good.
So no,
So
life,
good.
like that's why I said life be life, and you can do one or
Yeah,
two things. You can either see the good or just
that's
dwell
right.
on the bad.
Yeah, we have choice. And what I appreciate about what you just said is I tell especially these young folks, the millennials, and there's a lot that we could do with technology and AI, and all of that is good to advance just connectivity and communication. But to think about the human existence and how things were built and stories were shared, I mean, it was through the power of telling stories. That's how they preserved heritage and culture and traditions and religion. And so that doesn't stop today just because we have this overabundance and influx of noise and information. People are hungry to hear your story, and
Yeah,
everybody has a story. And
everybody.
you and I'm telling you, we're more sister and brother than we realize. I think every report card for me was like she talks too much. But no one ever said until I got intersected with the right individual, she talks too much and she's going to make a great leader one day.
They
She
forgot
talks
that
too much
part.
and
Yeah.
no, so it's our job because now we
Yeah.
are the byproducts of what was really harmful as children. We know what it takes to get through that kind of broken stage. It's our job to connect the reality of what's in someone's life today versus the potential of where they could go. That's hope. That's the epitome of hope. That's our job. We're
Mhm.
hope dealers. So I love
Yeah.
that.
No, yeah. Listen,
Good.
we're just talking gems right now, and I hope that so many people can really digest what the conversation is,
Yeah,
because we are two people that statistically shouldn't have made it this far.
that's right. That's right.
And here we are. So kudos to us. What do you think the
Yeah.
difference is between surviving trauma and healing through it?
Ooh, that's good. Surviving for me is just like you are bracing and moving from trauma to trauma. You
Hmm.
are getting through the just a very physical impact of what happens when you sustain harm. But thriving and really healing through trauma says there's a place of disruption that trauma has caused. There's a breaking that happens,
Hmm.
but in healing, I take that breaking and I don't allow it to just break me in totality. I take that breaking and put it in an archive, a vault in my heart, wherever it needs to live and foster and cultivate to become a nugget for learning and for change. And so, every breaking, every piece of trauma, as you heal, what you find is that you are able to stomach and withstand the really hard parts of your life. But healing says, what did I learn from that? What did I lose from that? What boundary will I establish so that won't hurt as much? Maybe what
Hmm.
relationship will I not enter into now that I know this is the result? I don't
Yeah.
care if you were in foster care or you were adopted. Every human being, the one thing we have in common is trauma. And trauma is simply synonymous with loss. Whether it was I'm in a military family and I had a school that I loved and we moved all the time, we as human beings have a constant commonality of loss. And so surviving repetitive loss is just not opening the mind and the heart and the spirit to learn from it, to heal, to brace for it, and prepare for it in the future. It's staying this in this real kind of tactical state all the time. The brain science talks about your amygdala. And when we're in trauma or high stress response, there's the fight, there's the flight, there's freeze, or there's appease. When you're constantly just surviving trauma, your lid is just going like this, and you're
Hmm.
just going through one of those four responses. But when you're healing, you're taking time to recenter, to focus, to ground. You're putting your lid back on, and you're telling your prefrontal cortex, what do I need to know about this incident that allows me to heal and be prepared, be better resilient, be better fortified if and when trauma happens again. So I think that's the difference is it's a mindset shift, it's
Okay.
a heart posture, and it's frankly the brain science, what you are doing with your brain so that you can be well.
Mindset is everything. I think
Yes.
that's really what last year, even just the friend I was telling you about, she's kind of experiencing now, is really working on the mind. And what does that look like? And
Yep.
and and that is sometimes stop talking to those people that you love
Ooh, I
because
felt that one
those
in my soul.
it is. I've had to experience that, and
Yeah.
sometimes the doubt comes from those at home,
Mm,
and like as I was going on this journey of for the first, so I've always been an entrepreneur, but
yeah.
I always had a part-time job. And then
Hmm.
because of who we are, we can't just do part-time things. We
Right.
give our full
Right.
time when it's a part-time, right?
Yeah.
So I finally said, you know what? I'm gonna leave corporate. And I was going to make this jump. And of course, and not that she meant it in any wrong way. She was just questioning as a woman should.
Yeah.
But sometimes that becomes doubt in our minds,
That's
right?
right.
Because
Yeah.
now we feel like, wait, you don't believe me? Like we're
Mhm.
it's not her. It's just it's these things that are
Yeah.
in us. And I've realized that, even friends that I was talking to on a weekly, when they say, how's your small community doing? And you're like, already, like, you're belittling me. I can't talk
Power
to this
words.
person.
Yeah.
He didn't
Yeah.
mean anything bad about it. He just needed to change his words. But who are we to sit here and try to change somebody else when we can't change ourselves? We go back
That's
to that.
right.
So I had to really work on the mindset and really had to the music I was listening to. I had to go to more worship
That's
music,
good.
more music that would just feed in the soul,
That's good.
because a lot of the times we are pouring into others and no one teaches us how to pour into ourselves.
Yeah.
So that mind, it is that mind resetting, finding things that you love to do. I love planting, so that's just where I reset the
Yeah.
mind. And
Yeah.
everybody else does different things. So what is your go-to when you talk about
Oh,
just being in your zone,
in my zone. Well, when you talked about mindset, I think we've talked about boundaries as being a bad thing. But when
Mhm.
you're trying to get from that place of just surviving trauma and healing trauma, boundaries are essential. They're protective factors, they're guardrails. And so when I set a boundary for me, so this is the answer to the question about the self care, is I'm okay not only just with saying no. One of my good friends, he said, forget about FOMO, this fear of missing out. He said, I need you to try on JOMO. And I was like, what's that? And he said, the joy of missing out. I learned that at 43 years old, and it has totally changed my mindset because like you, I think it's a byproduct of our trauma, but it's being adopted. It's being gritty and hungry and entrepreneur-ish. We tell ourselves there's only one standard, whether it's part-time, whether it's temporary. It is
Yes,
excellence all the time. And
absolutely.
in doing that, we don't give ourselves enough grace and margin and okayness to say, I'm going to miss out and be okay. And I don't even need to have something meaningful to replace that. It could literally just be still and being mindless. So
Mm,
that's honestly as simple as it sounds. I love outsides and beaches and vacations and prayer and worship music. I love working out. But my challenge is I'm already known for doing everything all the time. And my husband told me, he said, you just struggle with being still. So
mhm.
having to now at 44 say it is perfectly not only okay, but it is a place of joy. It is a sanctuary of feel good
Yeah.
and healing to just be. I get a gold star for that. No one in the corporate world would give me a gold star.
Listen,
My life
saying
depends on
no,
it. Say no.
saying no. What people don't realize, it even opened doors for you that you
Yes,
didn't
it
know was
will. Oh,
there.
that's so good. Yes.
I was just sharing this with someone that I had to say no to a client, and because I said
Mm.
no to that client, it provided me more time for a bigger client that
Oh,
aligned with my purpose. You know what I
yes.
mean?
That's
So
good.
yeah, saying no,
That's
and
good.
it's funny because I hate the word no. Like not now, but
Bad.
you hear too many no's, and it's like you feel
Yeah.
defeated.
Yeah. Yeah.
And then when you say no to somebody else, you're like, damn, like, can I do it?
Yeah.
But you got to respect your time.
That's
You
right.
got to respect your time, because time is everything. We talk about being
Yes.
parents. We talk about just doing the things that we love more. How in the world you get to do more of you if you're
That's right.
still extending yourself when you're
I
already extending
know.
yourself on every day
That's
with what you
good.
do?
Yeah. My
Yeah.
husband used to say, don't give the world your best and then give your family, the people who mean the most, what's left. And I don't want that legacy. I don't want that reputation to be left with my family. So, yeah, I'm good on excellence. It's there and it's still in me when I need it. But the no is okay. Sometimes you
My
have to know.
my,
Both
my
uses
wife
of the word.
my wife says to me, treat me how you be treating everybody else. Talk to me how you talk to everybody else out
That's
there. I'm
right.
like, oh my God, what are you talking
Because
about?
we're always putting on, right? I mean, that's just how we are. And, when you're younger or healing from trauma, you're doing that because you want to feel validated. You want to see and feel and hear value on the other side of that because you're still trying to put your worth composite back together. It's a result of trauma. But as you heal, again, I think that whole thread you talked about, Efrain, is how do you go from surviving to thriving and healing? Even the stories you tell yourself about what
Yeah,
people say when you say no, those have got to shift. And when you
yeah,
do, you're like, I'm okay. Even if they don't like the no, I'm okay.
yeah,
I'm okay.
yeah, yeah. No, for
So,
sure. And sometimes saying no to somebody else, what they don't realize is actually beneficial for them
as
because they
well.
needed.
Mhm.
Sometimes when you tell somebody the truth, it's not
Yes.
for us; it's for them.
That's right.
Like, but they don't see it.
That's right.
Whatever we got, like you said, we got to just move on. We did what we had to
That's
do
right.
for the right reasons
Yeah.
because we always have just that within us. Let's talk about as we start to wrap up this organization that you've been leading. How long have you been running this organization?
Oh gosh, hard to believe. It's about 3.5 years, and I inherited such a long-standing, reputable organization, and it's been such a challenging but fruitful and beautiful 3 years. So going into my fourth year in
Okay, and what
2026.
is it? What does a day to day look like in the organization?
I love it because no 2 days are the same. I tell folks I am really the conductor. I am the shepherd. I'm the protector
Mhm.
of the team. And so I am so fortunate to support and really help shepherd about 750 employees across Missouri and Kansas. And
Wow.
so a lot of it is just helping to kind of air traffic control certain decisions and communications. Obviously, I have a governing board, 15 bosses who are responsible for the strategic and financial health of the organization. But my job is to make sure that all 28 programs, all 750 staff feel supported. They have the tools that they need. We remain financially responsible and viable for our work to continue. And sometimes it's just helping individuals think through what to do, the crisis, the unthinkable, the unavoidable. So I really am a mini MINI crisis manager into scale. Sometimes a day is
Mhm.
really smooth and it's all celebration when I get to go see a youth who's aging out of foster care graduate from our Ozanam campus. But some days are really hard where a family is going through trauma and perhaps a child is coming into custody and there's a crisis that involves some of my leaders. So I love it because I first have to show up for people with an
Mhm.
empathic heart. I don't always have the answers, and I'm not the expert. I just am the shepherd and the protector of their time, their interest, their value, and making sure that we're financially sound to continue the work.
Love that. Love that. How many programs do you guys do you know the number? I'm pretty sure it's
Well,
plenty.
28.
20. Okay, she came up with the
28.
numbers
But I will tell you though, it's an interesting time for nonprofit organizations.
for sure.
Without going through the full history, in 2017, a seminal kind of moment occurred for us. We used to be five separate individual organizations who my predecessor, being very forward minded and kind of thinking long range, said, we're better together instead of competing for contracts and resources and staff. Why don't we collectively share, pool our
Wow.
resources, our ability? So they officially merged and became one Cornerstones of Care in 2017. But now, as we talk about impact and what's sustainable and threats to our funding and environment, from federal disruptions to competitive
Mhm.
grants and contracts at the state
Mhm.
level, every strategic cycle is like, do we still need to be 28 programs strong? And you know what? Good leadership says you have to know when something's no longer viable, no longer fruitful, or it's causing a financial or operational bleed to the community or to the organization. So that's the exciting but very difficult part of being a CEO is at some point you have to deliver the hard decision. You might have to sunset a program because you want your organization and the people who work for your organization to remain and sustain. So lots of tension between
I got a question.
good,
I got a question
great.
on that one right now.
Yeah,
Okay,
go
I got a
ahead.
question. There's a young woman in leadership right now
Yeah.
that has to make that decision, right?
Yes. Yes.
And you're in a room full of probably men.
Yeah.
How does that look and sound like? Like, I can imagine you've done it now multiple times, but someone has never done this and
Yeah.
got to go and say, "Hey, we have to do this," and then there's that pushback. How are you
Yeah.
navigating that?
Yeah, so I always tell my leaders, especially women and women of color, is lead into curiosity. When you take more time to listen, to analyze, to take
Mhm.
notes, to kind of get your thoughts together, and then at the right time, ask the right informed, data driven question, what I have noticed is that my counterparts, they become very curious about you. Because as unfortunate and real as it is, all human beings have a prejudice. They have a particular narrative and story that they've told themselves about a particular person, especially about optically what they know to be true. So, what I have found is instead of being always the first to talk, talking the longest, I am going to think and operate in a way that really is parallel and synonymous to my peers. And so I think about the person who has the objection, and I know this person wants information rooted in data or in strategy. They don't want my emotion. They want something cognitive and business based. So my one advice would be take your time to prepare and deliver your mic drop effectively. Not everything you say
Mm,
will be a mic drop moment, but what I've learned from my mother, and when she retired from Honeywell after 43 years, the one thing that all of her peers said is that Betty Joyce doesn't speak often, but when she speaks, you listen. So there's something to be said about a humble leader who
mhm.
absorbs, who listens, who analyzes, who gets themselves together. They take a breath and then they enter the conversation. That would be my one piece of
Okay.
sound
No,
advice.
that was good. No, that's
Yeah.
really good. Because I think a lot of people just struggle at that space, as you mentioned, a woman of color, or sometimes just
Yes.
being of color in a room where you are the minority.
Yeah.
It's very hard sometimes. I've been in rooms, and I can only imagine you have, where you become the young one, right? Like
The
you're
young
too
one, the
young.
only one, the first one.
So, it's sometimes you got to make those tough decisions, but
Yeah.
you also just have to make it with confidence. I think being confident
Correct.
as well.
Correct.
A lot of people sometimes look at you because of the skin color, because of
Mhm.
your background, whatever, and just don't think that you have what it takes.
Yeah.
And you still have to be confident in that,
Agreed.
because our stories, people didn't believe in us. There's people that didn't believe in
That's
us. There's
right.
people that didn't think we'll make it this far.
That's right.
I mean, I can go back when you talked about just early in the conversation on someone just forgetting to tell you talk too much and she forgot to tell that part.
That's right.
I
Yeah.
was told by my counselor that I would never like hey, might as well get a 9 to 5 job, Efrain. School is not for you. You're not going to make it there. But she forgot to say where else I was going to make it, right? Like they
Yeah.
forgot the other parts of the story.
Yeah.
Um, it's happening right here in the end of the conversation when we talked about that is be confident who you are.
That's so
You
good.
know
Yeah.
everything you had to do to get there, not
That's
everybody
right.
else. They
That's
can't
right.
walk a mile in your shoes,
That's
you know?
right. Yeah.
So,
And
um,
the last thing I'll say, Frank, sometimes your reputation will precede you. So if you're a young African American female or any type of minority leader, the important thing is to know is someone is always watching. So when you are intentional and strategic and being authentically yourself, I have never changed as a leader. You'll see me on Fridays and I'll have my Air Force Ones on and my gold jacket. Like that surprised people 3 years ago. They became curious about it and they saw with consistency this is who she is. So now, even before I come into a room, my reputation, my consistency, my reliability precedes me. So remember, you're always building a narrative. It may take a while for the world to know your name, but that's okay. What you just said, keep your own confidence because you know what you have survived. Eventually, the
mhm.
narrative will catch up. It absolutely will.
I love it. So where can people find more about the organization? And if you're on LinkedIn, if you can kind of share that information as well.
Absolutely. So we can be found at cornerstonesofcare.org, O-R-G, so a nonprofit organization. And I'm on LinkedIn as Merideth Rose. Cornerstones of Care is also on LinkedIn. I know we'll be tagged when we share the
Yep,
podcast.
yep,
So
for sure.
we'd love for folks to come check us out. We like to say, come alongside us in the work. While we always appreciate financial contributions, what we need to safe, caring adults and community members. So volunteer, in kind, lift a hand, mentor a youth. There's so many things that you can do to partner with us.
I love that. Well, Meredith, before we also hop off, I got to ask you that blind question. So this is the end one. If
Okay.
you could write a letter to your 19-year-old self, that
Um,
teenage mom, fresh out of foster care,
mm,
what would you say?
oh my gosh. I'm going to go back to my first statement. Even today, you are never and you are not so far gone that you cannot restore, rebuild, and thrive one day at a time.
Yeah.
You can
One day
do
at a time
this.
it is. Yeah,
Yeah, I
one day
love
at a
it.
time it is. Well, Meredith, we appreciate you. Guys that are still watching, make sure you guys do like, subscribe, and comment, and go check out Meredith and the work that she's doing. So you can check out on LinkedIn. She talked about the URL. You guys can go find her at. And it's not all about the money. It's
Yes.
sometimes just you showing up, being authentically you, and it changes lives. So Meredith, we thank you so much. My name's Efrain. We'll catch you guys on the next one. Laters.